Back on MorningLine, our guest this morning, Clint Kelly, malpractice attorney here in town, taking your phone call, 737-7587. As we went to the break, I was talking about this case involving a firefighter locally that had what was a surgery. I think it was on his leg or something. He ends up dying, and he was a young man, and he was tragic, well-loved and respected man. I haven't heard what's happened with that case. I don't even know if there's litigation. But as soon as I saw that, I thought, something fishy here.
Yeah, when you told me about this originally, that's what I thought it was a blood clot. I don't know, because I don't know the facts of that case, but when people die from routine procedures, particularly if it's involving an arthroscopic procedure where they're immobilized for a long period of time, blood clot prevention is the #1 priority for those patients. And when you find out that patients died, particularly those who've had what's called a pulmonary embolism, that is a blood clot that migrates through your leg up to your lungs. It cuts off the blood supply to your heart. It'll kill you. And it is the #1 cause of preventable death in hospitals today.
And that now is treated under standard of care.
Correct.
There is a standard to prevent that.
Correct. They give you either medication or they will attach those, what they call sequential compression devices, pneumatic compression devices, those things that squeeze your legs, keeps the blood flowing through your body. It's either one or both of those preventative methods that is standard of care to prevent deadly blood clots.
Fair to say, though, that even with those preventative methods, that sometimes they fail and an embolism could occur despite that?
They can, but they are reported in the literature to be very successful. Okay. Most of the time they're going to work, and you sure want to have it than not. Because, like I said, blood clots are the one thing that keeps you from leaving the hospital and can kill you when you have a routine procedure.
We'll talk more on that. We've got a phone call for you. We'll take Janice. Good morning, Janice. Thanks for waiting.
Thank you.
Hey, how can we help you, ma'am?
I have a question. I had surgery on my foot in 2016, and when he took the bandages off, I couldn't move 2 of my toes, and I asked him why couldn't I do that, and he said that it would get better. So I went back for another checkup, and they were the same, plus my arch had fallen, my leg swells really bad, and he did tell me he nicked some nerves he shouldn't have. So that year, it was like 6 months later, he had quit, just shut his business down. He's no longer practicing medicine, and I've been told that I could not do anything about it. So is it too late to even try? I mean, I'm on my feet. I'm a hairdresser, and I can't even stand up more than 4 or 5 hours.
When were you told that he had cut the nerves or damaged the nerves?
He told me after my, you go back for several visits after your surgeries. It was like the 2nd visit.
Back in 2016? Yes,
and then he wrote us a Dear John letter saying that he is leaving. He shut his medical practice. I mean, he was gone. He retired, he said.
All right. What's the answer, Nick?
You're out of luck.
Yeah.
You're out of luck. And it's awful, and I don't know. She might have had a case here, potentially. But
she might have, yeah.
The bottom line is it's more than a year, right?
Yeah.
And that's the sad fact.
Janice is the reason why I tell people every time on this show, and it's painful because it sounds like she had a meritorious case, that you have to call and get a consultation shortly after you believe that you've been a victim of malpractice. And in Janice's case, when you're told by a doctor or by someone affiliated with the doctor that the wrong nerve was cut or something occurred during the surgery that led to a bad outcome that seems like it was negligent, you've got to pick up the phone and make a call and get an opinion, or else, like Janice, that year runs out and you don't have a claim.
Yeah, the moment he said that to her on the 2nd visit, that's like,
that puts her on what they call, the law calls constructive notice. That you've been notified at that point that you may have a claim, and that's when the clock starts ticking. And we have a very restrictive law in Tennessee about the timing of filing these claims. They are extremely protective of doctors and hospitals, and unfortunately a bunch of cases like Janice's will never see the courthouse because people just don't know about that law.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that the doctor even maybe acknowledged that to some degree. But isn't it true, too, sometimes, and she mentioned this, the doctor said, well, you'll have some numbness, but it will get better.
Correct.
And sometimes they like to say, well, it might take a year to get better. Really, how convenient, 1 year later.
And I hate to keep using Janice as a warning, but that's the truth. When the doctor tells patients, hey, you're going to get better, just give it some time, give it some time, most of the time they're telling the truth, okay? The problem is when they're told that at the 10th month and the 11th month and the 12th month, that's when the problem occurs, because the patient puts their faith and trust in that doctor that they're going to get better, and then they find out after the year they haven't gotten better. They then want to go see a lawyer, and the lawyer has to say, I'm sorry, you don't have a case. So regardless of what the doctor tells you, you have to keep in mind that if you're not getting any better within a year, you should call. I mean, you should really call anyway, but if you're going to give the benefit of the doubt to the doctor in that situation, just make sure you make a call at the 10th or 11th month.
I was going to say, do you think that's why sometimes patients don't? I think we all tend to maybe put doctors on a pedestal to some degree. You respect them, you hopefully trust them, or you wouldn't be going to them. And so you just don't think about going, unless it's obvious, to go to call a lawyer because you think you've been burned by your doctor.
Yeah, Nick, if I wasn't in this profession and I was just John Q. Public or John Q. Patient, I wouldn't think to call a lawyer and to sue. If my doctor's telling me, Clint, you're going to get better, just give it some time, I would think over time, I'm going to get better, because of course I'm going to trust the doctor. You know, that's what I'm paying him to do, a good job, and I expect him to do a good job, and it's in our DNA to trust doctors. The problem is, I'm in this profession. I have seen where doctors do that and where patients don't get better, or they mislead patients, and the patients don't have a case.
That is why we have him on. I mean, the bottom line is I've learned so much from you in the times you've been. I really have. I quote you all the time because of things like, well, now what I learned today. You want defensive medicine. I didn't think about that. I thought, I don't want to pay all these other bills. Or just the perspective. And you're right. Whether it's you or it's criminal law, sometimes the average individual hopefully has never been in court. And they haven't, and they don't understand it. But you see it every day, and that's why you want to listen. It is a possibility that you've been wronged, and you have every right to call a lawyer. Yeah,
and with regard to defensive medicine, you don't want to be that one patient who gets shortchanged. Oh, I don't think I'll run the test on Nick because I think Nick will be okay. Nick goes home and drops dead, from a heart attack or something, some other type of ailment where a test could have detected it. So I always tell people, friends of mine, relatives, insist on testing and insist on getting answers to questions, because the healthcare system is just a big machine. It's basically assembly line medicine, and if you don't stand up for yourself and insist on getting good care, sometimes you can be chewed up and spit out and not get the care you deserve.
Absolutely right. The number is 737-7587. Got some lines open if you want to jump in. We got calls for Clint though as well, and we will go next to Pam. Good morning, Pam.
Good morning.
What can we do for you? Tell me you got something within the year of limitations.
Well, I do, but my problem is that we are from Kentucky. I do not know if Clint practiced in Kentucky.
I do take cases in Kentucky. What I do in Kentucky is I have a lawyer, a couple law firms in Kentucky who are licensed there, who can admit me to practice there for a particular case. It's called Pro Hoc Vice, and it allows me to take cases in Kentucky so long as I have a Kentucky lawyer assisting me during the case.
Yep, there you go.
So what's the case, Pam?
My daughter was in a domestic violence case and got her cornea of her eye cut very deeply, and of course we followed doctor's protocols. She was even in the hospital. This happened in 2016. In 2017, a lawyer in Louisville said that he needed to smooth the cornea off, enable her to heal that cornea.
You mean a doctor? A doctor.
A doctor
the doctor said that, yes.
Okay.
So he set up a surgery, and after that surgery, she couldn't see as well as she could before. She could see, visions or outlines, but after that, she couldn't see. She also started having red spots come up on her nose, her chin, her forehead, the sides of her face. We finally found out that that was staph from the surgery. It has left scars all over her face, and to this day, we cannot get the staph completely under control. So her eye is no better. She's basically blind and is now being told that there is no chance for cornea transplant. that was what we were heading for, was to get the cornea transplant. The husband is not in jail.
Okay, well, that's a separate issue. But your issue here is the situation with her eye deteriorating, and so the second condition. You say you're within the year of statute of limitations because the smoothing of the cornea was done sometime in 2017.
November the 27th, I think.
Okay, well then you still. So what are your thoughts? Everything from the infection to the eye.
Well, let me take this one at a time. First of all, I have a case right now involving a corneal damage to a cornea performed by a surgeon here in Nashville who is a prominent eye surgeon who screwed up really bad and has blinded a lady up in her right eye.
Really?
One of my experts is from Louisville, Kentucky, so I don't know if who she's talking about may be one of my experts, which of course would conflict me out, so I'm a little bit nervous about discussing it, but since I don't know who the doctor is, at least I can...
Well, there's probably a lot of doctors. What do you think the odds of that are?
There aren't a whole lot of cornea specialists per city.
Do you want me to give you his name?
No, I don't, Pam. Not on the phone. We can do this off air.
Yeah, hang on. We'll give you some info, but listen up.
Let me tell you, though, from the corneal standpoint, I will say this. There are various risks of procedures where even when the doctor does a good job, the patient may get worse. I'm not saying that's what happened here. That's something that would have to be investigated. The staff, however, is something that is very commonplace nowadays from surgery, and it's very difficult to prevent staph. Sometimes it's just going to happen, and there's not much you can do about it. My cases that the ones I take are not when the patient gets the infection, it's when the infection is not properly diagnosed or treated.
Okay.
Because it's just too hard for me to prove that the staph could have been prevented.
Right.
Too many ways to get infected. But Pam, when we go off air, just tell is it Mary
Elena or Rick back there?
Or Rick, the name of the doctor, and then I can let you know whether or not it's the same guy that.
And if it's not, and hang on, Pam, and we'll go to break here. She's online too, so we'll get the name of the doctor, and they can pass that to you, and you can decide during the break. But should she call your office?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I'm thinking, just to get more details. And Pam, stick around for the show. We'll have the information up, but the bottom line is he's in Hendersonville here, and she can call your office, which case she kind of gives the basics to your assistant, right?
Correct. And my office will do an intake. They'll get a history from Pam, identify all the actors, also the date when things happen, and get more background on what happened, why it happened, in particular, what are the damages, and Pam's discussed what that is. And like I said, if I don't have a conflict with the doctor, I can take a look at the case.
There you go. Pam, thank you for calling. Listen, stay on hold. We'll take a break when we come back. More of your calls, more of our conversation with malpractice attorney Clint Kelly right after this.